Funding for this program made possible by the Investor Protection Trust, the State of Alaska Division of Banking and Securities, and AARP Alaska. In today's program, we'll hear the remarkable story of Bill Burk, an Alaska victim of financial fraud who got his money back in a rare consumer victory. Now here's your host, Ann Secrest.
Hello everyone and welcome to AARP Alaska. Joining us is Kristy Naylor, Securities and Enforcement Chief, and David Newman, Senior Examiner for the State of Alaska Division of Banking and Securities. Kristy and David, thank you again for joining us. It's wonderful to have you here. First, we've got a lot to talk about in this program, but I want you to give an overview of what the Division of Banking and Securities does.
The Division of Banking and Securities regulates 12 different financial programs, financial institutions from banks, credit unions, trust companies, securities, mortgage lending, money service businesses, payday lenders, and others. We're very busy.
And I want to bring up a slide of what your mission statement is.
Our mission is to protect and educate consumers of financial services and promote safe and sound financial systems. And consumer protection is very important to us as a division.
And we have a lovely photo of your boss.
That's Kevin Anselm, our boss.
In our, we're going to talk about scams in this program, and scams that target seniors, unfortunately. And tragically, one gentleman in Anchorage got caught up in a scam. And David, I know that you and George Hum, also of the Division of Banking and Securities, you had an opportunity to interview Mr. Burk. If you would tell us a little bit more about this gentleman.
Well, I handle a lot of the enforcement for the division, and so we came across Mr. Burk. Mr. Burk was a Korean War veteran, former boxer, a successful commercial fisherman. At this point, Mr. Burk was about 78 years old. He was in, at this time, pretty poor health. So he would be alone a lot during the day. His daughter would come in the mornings and visit him, but a lot of times he would be alone. And so one day he got a call from a firm in New York that was interested in having him invest with them. And so Mr. Burk said he would be interested in that. So I can back up a little bit. What happens is, in Mr. Burk's case, and in a lot of cases for elderly people, a firm will call them, and there would be an agent on the phone wondering if they're interested in investing with them. They say, and if the person says yes, what happens is that person doesn't even talk to them. It's kind of the lead person to get somebody on the hook. And so the next thing that happens is they develop what's called a qualified lead card. And they pass it along to another agent who might be a little more talented.
Better at selling.
Better at selling. Yeah. And there was another individual that called Mr. Burk and explained to him that they had this great deal for him, and they actually promised him a safe investment that was promising returns of 16 to 18%. And so obviously, to Mr. Burk, you know, anytime you can get a safe investment for 16 to 18%, that sounds like a great deal. So he said, okay, let's go ahead and go with it. And a few days later, a FedEx package arrived in the mail, and there was an investment opportunity for $12,000. What Mr. Burk didn't realize at the time was that this, quote, safe investment was actually for what are called junk bonds, which are bonds that are rated just above default. So anything can happen where they can fall and the bonds would be worth nothing. But Mr. Burk didn't realize that. He thought they were a safe investment. They were promised to be a safe investment. And he actually, based on some of the materials he was sent, thought that he was investing with the Royal Bank of Canada. And so obviously, in his mind, that seemed like a safe investment for him, more like a savings account. So he sent the $12,000 in. 3 days later, he gets another FedEx package where they're asking him to invest another $15,000. So he goes ahead and sends in another check to them for $15,000. And so the total amount that he had invested at that time was $27,000. And unbeknownst to him, those things started to drop in value very quickly. But at the same time, and what's even more terrible, is that this company in New York continued to try to get money out of Mr. Burke. They sent him 2 more offers, one for $50,000 and one for $80,000. The $50,000 one had no credit rating to it whatsoever. The second one was even worse. It was for something called the zero coupon bond, which doesn't pay any interest until it matures. And this coupon bond would not mature until the year 2019.
Or 2054.
2054.
2054.
When Mr. Burke would be 119 years old. Luckily, Mr. Burke did not invest in those 2 things, so he didn't invest the extra 130,000. But you can see how this was set up. They set somebody up to call. They find somebody on the hook. They tell them that they're very safe investments, and then the money starts dropping and dropping and dropping.
Now, he heard safe, he heard 16 to 18%. He thinks it's going to a bank in Canada. So he's buying into the whole thing. And these salespeople are reading off a script.
Right. And they're very good at selling. There was urgency to the message that it was something you got to get on right away. We can send you the materials right away. We'll send you they even sent him the FedEx package to send it back to them so that they could get it overnight.
Very important.
Right away, yeah, get all those documents back. They filled out, the forms for him. And we did discover in the course of our investigation that they were selling these as safe investments, and that senior agents at this company, Global Arena Capital, were in fact telling the junior agents to tout this as a safe investment.
How did this gentleman come to the attention of the Division of Banking and Securities?
Well, at first, what we came to realize after speaking with Mr. Burke on a couple of occasions was that when he started losing money and started getting these reports that he was losing money, he was very ashamed and embarrassed. And he didn't share it with his daughter that this was happening. But luckily, he came around and decided to tell his daughter, and he wrote a handwritten, in pencil, note to the Division of Banking and Securities, basically saying, I've invested with these people, I'm starting to lose my money, they won't call me back, and I don't know what to do about it, can you help me? And so at that point, we immediately initiated an investigation to see what was going on.
All right, let's take a look at part of that interview.
Okay. So at no time during the first or the second call when they talked to you, did they discuss with you the fact that the 16% return that they were talking about was based on this particular corporate bond, and that bond was rated CCC-, which is one step above default?
No, the only thing I can remember is they said that I was to get 16 to 18% interest.
Did they ask you where this money had come from that you were investing?
No.
The next question, it's not really a question, it talks about the account source, and this was a cold call. You'd never heard of them before they called you on the telephone.
And so those bonds were supposed to mature in 2054?
I just,
That's what it says on the
Yeah,
paperwork there?
that's all I know.
And what's your current age?
79.
79, okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is the first thing the division did with Mr. Burke's case?
Well, the first thing we did was to try to get as much information from Mr. Burke as we could. Any paperwork that he received to them, any memories of people that he spoke to, any notes that he had taken down from anything. And from that information that we were able to obtain, we reached out to this particular firm, asked for any information from them that they had on his account. So we were able to compare the information that he had versus the information that they had. And then we reached out to them and started interviewing the agents that had contacted him.
And Bill was great at taking notes. He kept a file. He had a little notebook by his phone, so that when he had phone calls, he wrote down who he was speaking with, the date, the time. This was completely important to our investigation. He saved all the paperwork that they ever sent him, and he had handwritten notes on that. And we probably wouldn't have been able to get what we did in the outcome without his assistance there.
What responsibility does the salesperson or the management of Global Arena Capital have in their relationship with Mr. Burke?
Well, I mean, obviously when they contact him, they have the obligation to find out you know, how much money he has, his age, what his risk tolerance is, to find out what investments are suitable for him. Obviously, they didn't do that at all. In this particular instance, the paperwork that they sent back said Mr. Burke had a much higher net worth than he actually did. There was also a box check that Mr. Burke was supposedly interested in high risk and speculative investments, when of course that's the exact opposite that he was looking for. He was looking for conservative investments. And obviously the promises for the 16 to 18% returns were completely deceptive and misleading. So they violated both those things by explaining those things in just one phone call to Mr. Burke.
What red flags, you were there in the room, what red flags went off?
Right, well I would say just obviously right off the top, any promise of a safe investment of 16 to 18% is crazy, especially these days when any sort of regular investment in your savings account or in a certificate of deposit, which is a CD, is anywhere from 1 to at the most 2% these days. And these people are offering 16 to 18% safe returns. That's a huge red flag.
What's the end of the story? What was the end of Mr. Burke's story?
Well, we did take a cease and desist order against the firm and a number of its principals, and issued a fine against them, which we hope to collect a $175,000 fine against those individuals. And we were able to negotiate a settlement with one of the individuals who is involved in this case to repay Mr. Burke the money that he lost. He luckily had some still in his account at the time that we intervened, and they released that back to him. But there was about $17,000 of loss, and that was repaid to Mr. Burke. And David and I had the pleasure of delivering that to him ourselves.
So you went to his home and handed him a check.
Yes.
What was his reaction?
He was thrilled, and he actually got a little emotional, and his daughter got a little emotional. But and on a personal side for us, it was one of the most rewarding things in my professional career so far, to be able to give him that check and to see the reaction of them. So.
And he had no idea.
Yeah.
He had no idea.
We wanted to make it a surprise so we could just bring it over. And
Wonderful.
See, yeah.
We'll be right back with Kristy Naylor and David Newman after this break.
Before making any investment, check it out. Your state securities regulator should be the first call you make before you turn money over to a broker or investment advisor. In Alaska, call toll-free 888-925-2521. It's your money. It's worth a phone call to check it out.
We're back with Kristy Naylor and David Newman, who are with the Division of Banking and Securities, State of Alaska. And thinking about Mr. Burke, it's not uncommon to have a senior who's home alone, and the telephone is right there, and he may have been eager to talk to someone and have a conversation. So, and unfortunately, the fraudsters know this. So how do we get ahead of that?
Well, I would recommend anytime you get a cold call with some kind of investment opportunity or something like that, just hang up the phone. You won't hurt their feelings, I promise. But if you do want to talk to them, and that's fine, don't be pressured by high pressure sales tactics. They usually have a sense of urgency in this sales pitch that you need to make a decision right now, commit to something on the phone. They may want to take money over the phone. Don't do that. Ask for everything in writing. Ask them to send it to you. ask that you have some time to look at it, and then when you get everything in writing, take it to a trusted family member, take it to your investment professional, or take it to us,
Yes.
and we can point out some of the red flags that may be there, or we can at least check to see if something is registered, if the salespeople are on the up and up, and so forth.
Now, in addition to your office, as far as checking out a broker, you've got there are 2 recommended sites that we want to share. The first one is brokercheck.finra.org. What type of information can be found there?
So BrokerCheck can tell you the employment history of someone, where they're registered to do business, what type of business that they're allowed to do. Do they sell insurance products and securities? Do they just sell securities? Things like that. And it can also tell you, most importantly, regulatory and disciplinary history, including customer complaints with a narrative of what happened with the complaint and how it was resolved, any actions, enforcement actions that state or federal government agency has taken, or if the firm has taken disciplinary actions against them. That's all in there. Can't tell you if they're going to do a good job managing your money, but that will help you make a good decision about whether you might want to hire them.
And then tell me about the second place that is sponsored by the SEC and the North American Security Administrators Association.
It's very similar to BrokerCheck through FINRA. It's just another website through the Securities and Exchange Commission on sec.gov. It's called the Investment Advisor Public Disclosure Database. It's usually referred to as IAPD, and you can go on there and get a lot of information about investment advisors.
And again, same type.
Same type of thing, everything that Kristy
Yeah.
explained, all that stuff will be on there.
And if people are thinking about it, go there, call you folks.
Right. Those are the 3 things I would say we recommend to people the most.
Right.
Obviously, call us. We're always here. We're always willing to talk to people anytime. If anybody has a question about really anything regarding banking and securities, Kristy and I are here. Obviously, other examiners or investigators in our office are there. But we also recommend the BrokerCheck and the IAPD.
Very good. Silly question, is this type of check free? Can people go on this at no charge?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So are the calls to us.
And sadly, we have another example of fraud and a short video. This time it's a real estate Ponzi scheme. So let's take a look at that video.
After all, he had prepared my taxes for 2 or 3 years. He said, if I could give you a real low risk, moderate return investment, would you be interested in it? Well, it sounds good to me. How low is the risk? He says, almost no risk. The original investment was $34,000 and change. And at the end of 6 years, I was supposed to have already received back in payments $41,000 and change. That looked real good to me. I mean, this is solid, right? I mean, I can't lose. I invested over $34,000. I received $1,100 back in change, and the rest was lost. At the time, it was about half of what I had saved, and there's nothing I can do about it. Grin and bear it.
That's tragic.
Yeah, this was a major Ponzi scheme, a real estate Ponzi scheme out of New Mexico. New Mexico Securities Division has produced a great video about this scheme that happened there. And with this, you notice some things that are interesting is that his tax preparer, he referred the investment to him, that he heard about it through a friend or a trusted person. And that's something that you often see in these types of fraudulent scams.
So you're speaking of affinity fraud.
Exactly. And affinity fraud, one that's common that people think of is religious groups, that you hear about things through your church organization, but it can be any type of affiliation, ethnic, racial, it could be an alumni association, educational, any of those. And those, it's that some people get into an investment, they hear about it, and it sounds like a great deal because they're starting to get returns, and they want to share it with their friends. And why wouldn't you? Of course you would. And so a lot of times the people who are being scammed help further the scam unknowingly because they are sharing it with their friends and bringing more people into the scam. That's exactly what happened with this case in New Mexico.
And it brings up the old saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And that's very similar to stuff we see all the time. Even if your friends are saying that they're getting high returns, things look great, a lot of times your antenna goes up and says, wait a second, this seems too good. And a lot of times it is too good to be true, because when they're promising you high returns with no risk, that doesn't happen. That's just not available. So people really need to, when they think something sounds a little fishy, to again reach out to us or reach out to other services that are available to check in on these things, and just don't go ahead and trust somebody because they're your family or they're in your religious group or anything like that. So
When we were preparing for the program, Kristy, you talked about the senior population and why we're often a target.
Well, the statistic that we often hear is that 10,000 people become seniors, enter the senior community every day, and that Alaska has a very high per capita senior population. We also have a very high income compared to, or wealth compared to the lower 48, and the fraudsters know that, they hear that, and people, seniors typically own their own home outright. They have a little bit of money, they may have a pension, they may have investments that they've had for a long time, and they are targets.
Let's talk a little bit of where lack of due diligence led to some investor harm, and this one's called Peru case. Tell me about that.
This is another one of the cases I worked on. We had an individual, a resident here in Alaska, who was just searching around on the internet and found somebody who liked to talk about commodities and gold and silver trading and stuff like that.
And bonds,
and
too.
bonds and all certain things, all those different type of things. And he found the website very interesting. And this person was offering to invest money for people. And so this person, unfortunately, thought they were doing their due diligence because he looked up the company name and he looked up one of the state websites, and it actually showed a valid business license, a valid corporate registration. But what he failed to do was to look into, contact us and look into the broker check or the SEC.gov. And so what you can think is really good due diligence that you're doing, unfortunately can lead to a bad result, because what happened is this individual ended up investing, what was it,
$120,000.
$120,000, and it turned out that what he thought was a legitimate operation out of Nevada turned out to be a fugitive who was running this website out of Peru. And he just so happened to be a fugitive that was wanted by the FBI for a large Ponzi scheme case that he had run a few years earlier back on the East Coast.
Oh my heavens. So the victim in this case thought they were doing due diligence by checking out the corporate
Business
license, but they didn't take that one next step.
Right.
By checking on FINRA, by calling your office and asking those important questions.
Right, by checking out if this individual basically was who he says he was, whether he was properly registered, and whether the firm was properly registered as well.
But was he using his real name?
He wasn't, no. He was going by a very generic name, and he was calling himself Robert Williams, which, that could be anybody. But the person he really was named Eric Bartoli, and if he had known that name, he would have really easily tied him to the Ponzi scheme. But some red flags were that the investment company that he was using, and he himself, if he's trading commodities, there's another different agency that regulates that outside of Securities, and then the Securities also, he would need to be FINRA registered, and he wouldn't have found that, and it would have been a big red flag.
Let's talk about GS Capital. What was involved there?
Okay, this was another one of my enforcement cases that I worked on. This was an individual out of California who was promised a great investment in what was supposed to be like a seafood processing company up here in Alaska. And of course that sounds good because salmon, halibut, Alaska, it sounds like a great thing. But what was most interesting about this one, and what other people have to realize as well, is that in addition to the investment this person was offered, they were also promised a leadership role in the company with a salary. I think he was promised to be the president with a pretty high salary. So it was another way for these people to get this individual to invest, when in fact there was no job available and the $40,000 just disappeared.
So he was asked to invest $40,000. You'll become the president of this new startup company.
Yeah, he said the salespeople here in Alaska said if you give us this $40,000, then we can tie up some loose ends with our financing, and we have a company over here who's ready to give us $10 million, and all we need is just this $40,000 to get it off the ground, and then we'll get $10 million, and you'll have a great job as the president of this multi-million-dollar company. And that company never promised $10 million for this seafood
Did
plant.
he check out anybody?
No, not in this instance, he did not. He thought everything was valid. He had a written contract in front of him that were signed by the parties. It looked right. Everything looked in order for him. The opportunity sounded great. It sounded exciting for him, so he didn't do the due
Diligence, so he
part.
was out 40 grand.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
I want to put up your contact information. Please, if anyone has any questions, contact
Yes.
you. Under any circumstances?
Under any circumstances, like I mentioned, we regulate a lot of different financial industries. So even if it's not something that we regulate, we can get you to the right place. We have a lot of connections, so please give us a call.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank our guests, Kristy Naylor and David Newman of the Alaska Division of Banking and Securities. It was wonderful having both of you here. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization with more than 87,000 members in Alaska. AARP is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for all as we age. We lead positive social change and deliver value to our members through information, advocacy, and service. Thank you for watching AARP Alaska.
Funding for this program made possible by the Investor Protection Trust, the State of Alaska Division of Banking and Securities, and AARP Alaska.